Almost everyone who has spent time around the Bible carries the same picture of Jesus' teaching. Simple stories for simple people. Farmers who understood seeds. Fishermen who understood nets. People without formal education who needed concrete images to grasp abstract truths. The parables were the great equalizer, a way of making the deepest truths of the kingdom accessible to everyone. That is the image. And then the disciples asked Jesus a direct question. Why do you speak to the people in parables? And Jesus gives an answer that shatters that image completely. Because the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven has been given to you, but not to them. Stop. Not to them. 5 words that most people read quickly and never fully sit with. Jesus is not saying the parables are simpler than direct teaching. He is saying the parables function differently for different people in the same crowd at the same moment. Some receive, others do not. And this is not an accident. What exactly is happening here? Jesus does not leave the question open. He reaches back into Scripture. He quotes Isaiah. You will be ever hearing, but never understanding. You will be ever seeing, but never perceiving. For this people's heart has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Read that last line carefully. They have closed their eyes. Not, their eyes were closed for them. Not, they were born blind. They closed their own eyes. Isaiah was describing a people who had seen everything, the signs, the warnings, the evidence, and had made a deliberate, sustained choice to stop seeing. Jesus quotes this text in Matthew 13, not as an abstract theological observation, but as a description of what is happening in front of him. The people in that crowd had heard him. They had seen the miracles, and something in them had already decided what to do with what they saw. The disciples and the crowd are standing in the same place, hearing the same words, watching the same teacher, but something is different between them. And it is not intelligence, it is not education, it is not social status or religious background. Some in that crowd had already made up their minds about Jesus before they heard a single parable. They had seen the miracles and explained them away. They had heard the teaching and looked for reasons to dismiss it. The disciples came close. They followed. They asked questions when they did not understand. They wanted to know what the parable meant, not just what it said. The crowd received the story and went home. They were moved by the miracles. They were impressed by the teaching. But when the parable ended, they did not stay to ask what it meant, because staying would have required something from them, something they were not willing to give. Jesus does not soften what follows. Whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. This is one of the most difficult statements in all of Jesus' teaching. A heart that is open, that seeks, that asks, that stays with the question, receives more, and keeps receiving. A heart that is closed, that has decided in advance what it will and will not accept, loses even the partial understanding it had. The loss was not the beginning of their refusal. It was the consequence of a refusal that had become persistent, a direction chosen repeatedly until it became the only direction available. And in the language of Isaiah, that persistent refusal carried its own judgment with it, not imposed from outside as an arbitrary penalty, but unfolding from within as the natural end of a heart that kept closing itself. Jesus tells the parable of the sower, the same farmer, the same seed, 4 different soils. The path, the seed is taken before it can take root. The rocky ground, it springs up quickly and dies just as fast. The thorns, it grows but gets choked out. The good soil, it produces a harvest. Same seed, 4 completely different outcomes. Not because the seed changed, because the soil was different. And then the disciples do something the crowd does not. They come to Jesus privately. They ask him what the parable means. They do not walk away with a story. They stay with the question. And Jesus explains everything. The mechanism is not theoretical. It is visible in real time, in the difference between those who stay and ask, and those who leave with only the surface of what they heard. So, was Jesus hiding the truth from certain people? In one sense, yes. He was teaching in a way that would not penetrate a calloused heart. Not because those people were beyond reach, but because truth that demands nothing cannot reach a heart that has decided it will give nothing. The parables did not create hard hearts. They revealed them. And in the logic of Isaiah, that revelation became part of the judgment already unfolding around those who refused to see. The concealment was not arbitrary. It was the shape that truth takes when it meets a will that has persistently chosen to turn away from it. Not for everyone? Not in the way most people assume. The story was spoken to everyone. What the story revealed or concealed depended on how the listener responded to the light already given. Did Jesus hide the truth from some people? The text does not let us resolve this comfortably. Jesus says the knowledge has been given to some and not to others. He quotes a prophet who described people whose hearts had become so calloused that hearing no longer produced understanding. And he applies that description to people standing right in front of him. This is not a passage about people who never had access to the truth. It is a passage about people who encountered the truth and chose repeatedly not to let it in. The parable revealed that choice, and in the logic of what Isaiah described, confirmed a judgment those hearts had already been moving toward. Not for everyone? The question the text leaves is not a comfortable one. It is not about those people standing in that crowd 2,000 years ago. It is about what happens to any heart that keeps encountering truth and keeps deciding what to do with it. What a heart consistently chooses to see eventually becomes all it can see.